We live in a society that values compassion. We are taught to empathize with those who have suffered. Victims of injustice rightfully hold a special place in our hearts. We want to protect them, to offer support, to help them heal. This instinct to protect the vulnerable is a fundamental part of human nature. However, this very human instinct can be manipulated. There are those who would exploit our empathy for their own gain. These individuals, these predators, understand the power of victimhood. They know that by presenting themselves as victims, they can gain sympathy, protection, and even power. They can silence their critics and manipulate those around them. This manipulation can take many forms. It can be subtle, like exaggerating a minor slight to gain an advantage, or it can be extreme, like fabricating entire narratives of abuse to destroy someone's reputation. Regardless of the method, the goal is always the same: to exploit the empathy of others for personal gain. The danger of this manipulation is that it undermines our ability to trust. When someone cries wolf too many times, we become desensitized to genuine suffering. We risk becoming cynical, jaded, and less likely to offer help when it is truly needed. The manipulation of victimhood is often amplified when authority figures are involved. Law enforcement, social services, and even the court of public opinion can be swayed by a convincing performance of victimhood. This is not to say that these institutions are inherently flawed. They are, after all, made up of individuals who are just as susceptible to manipulation as anyone else. The problem is that authority figures often have to make quick decisions based on limited information. In these situations, a claim of victimhood can be a powerful influencing factor. It creates an immediate bias towards believing the alleged victim and doubting the alleged perpetrator. This bias is not always conscious or malicious. It is often driven by a genuine desire to protect the vulnerable. However, it can lead to situations where accusations are taken at face value, evidence is overlooked, and due process is disregarded. The result can be devastating for those falsely accused, who may find themselves facing social ostracism, legal repercussions, and irreparable damage to their reputations. Sympathy is a powerful emotion. It is the foundation of empathy, compassion, and altruism. When we see someone suffering, we naturally want to help. We want to alleviate their pain, to offer comfort, to make things right. This instinct is hardwired into our brains, a product of our evolutionary history as social animals. Predators understand the power of sympathy. They know that by presenting themselves as victims, they can tap into this deep well of human emotion. They can elicit feelings of pity, concern, and protectiveness. This can lead to a number of advantages, from receiving preferential treatment to manipulating others into doing their bidding. The problem is that sympathy is not always a reliable indicator of truth. Just because someone appears to be suffering does not mean they are telling the truth. Emotions can be faked, stories can be fabricated, and appearances can be deceiving. One of the most insidious aspects of the predator's disguise is the way it plays on our assumptions. When someone claims to be a victim, we often automatically assume the worst about the accused party. We assume that they must have done something wrong, that they must be guilty of some transgression. This assumption is often reinforced by societal narratives that emphasize power dynamics and historical injustices. We are taught to be wary of those in positions of power, to be suspicious of those who fit certain profiles, to believe that certain groups are more likely to be perpetrators than others. While these narratives can be important for raising awareness about systemic issues, they can also be easily manipulated by those seeking to exploit them. By framing themselves as victims of these power structures, predators can deflect scrutiny and silence their critics. Section 5. Deflecting blame. Controlling the narrative. Playing the victim allows predators to control the narrative. By framing themselves as the injured party, they can deflect blame for their own actions. Any attempt to hold them accountable can then be painted as further victimization. This creates a vicious cycle where the predator's power grows with every accusation they make. This tactic is particularly effective in the court of public opinion. Social media, with its rapid-fire news cycle and tendency towards emotional reasoning, can be easily manipulated by those skilled in the art of victimhood. A well-placed accusation, amplified by hashtags and online outrage, can quickly destroy reputations and ruin lives. The speed at which information spreads online makes it difficult to separate fact from fiction. By the time the truth emerges, the damage is often already done. The accused, even if proven innocent, may never fully recover from the smear campaign. Section 6. Hiding in plain sight. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this manipulation is how it allows predators to hide in plain sight. By presenting themselves as vulnerable and in need of protection, they disarm potential victims and evade suspicion. This is especially true in cases of sexual assault, domestic violence, and other forms of abuse where there is often a power imbalance between the abuser and the abused. The predator may even go to great lengths to cultivate an image of themselves as a pillar of the community, someone who is respected, admired, and above reproach. This makes it even more difficult for victims to come forward, as they fear they will not be believed or that their accusations will be dismissed as the ramblings of a delusional or vindictive person. This is why it is so important to remember that abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of their age, gender, social status, or any other factor. We must be willing to believe victims even when the accused is someone we know and trust. Section 7. The Emperor's New Clothes. The manipulation of victimhood can be likened to the story of the Emperor's new clothes. Just as the Emperor parades around naked, convinced of his own finery, so too can predators convince others of their victimhood, even when the evidence is flimsy or non-existent. The key to this illusion is the complicity of those around them. The Emperor's courtiers, too afraid to admit they see nothing, shower him with praise for his non-existent clothes. Similarly, those around the predator may be reluctant to question their claims of victimhood, fearing social ostracism or accusations of insensitivity. This fear of speaking out allows the predator to continue their charade unchallenged. They become emboldened, their manipulations more brazen, their grip on power tighter. It is only when someone brave enough to speak the truth breaks the spell that the illusion crumbles. Section 8. The Price of Blind Trust. The consequences of blindly accepting claims of victimhood can be devastating. It can lead to the wrongful conviction of innocent individuals, the silencing of legitimate criticism, and the erosion of trust in institutions. It can also create a climate of fear and suspicion where people are afraid to speak out against injustice for fear of being labeled as perpetrators themselves. This is why it is so important to approach claims of victimhood with a healthy dose of skepticism. This does not mean that we should disbelieve victims or dismiss their experiences. It simply means that we should not allow our emotions to cloud our judgment. Section 9. The importance of critical thinking. So how do we protect ourselves from being manipulated by those who would exploit our empathy? The answer lies in critical thinking. We must be willing to question what we hear, to examine the evidence, and to consider alternative explanations. This means being aware of our own biases. We all have them, whether we realize it or not. Our upbringing, our experiences, and even our political beliefs can influence how we perceive information. By acknowledging our biases, we can begin to mitigate their impact on our judgment. It also means being willing to change our minds when presented with new information. None of us are infallible. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong and to adjust our beliefs accordingly. Section 10. Unmasking the predator. Unmasking a predator masquerading as a victim requires careful observation and a willingness to look beyond the surface. It means paying attention to inconsistencies in their stories, their patterns of behavior, and their interactions with others. Often there will be subtle clues that betray their true nature. They may be overly eager to play the victim role, relishing the attention and sympathy it brings. They may be quick to anger or aggression when their claims are challenged. They may have a history of manipulative behavior or a pattern of leaving a trail of damaged relationships in their wake. It is important to remember that these are just potential red flags, not definitive proof of manipulation. However, when these signs are present, they warrant further scrutiny. Section 11. Conclusion. Vigilance and justice. The manipulation of victimhood is a dangerous game, one that can have far-reaching consequences. It undermines our ability to trust, erodes our capacity for empathy, and perverts our sense of justice. It allows predators to operate with impunity, silencing their critics and leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. The only way to combat this manipulation is through vigilance and a commitment to truth. We must be willing to question what we hear, to examine the evidence, and to hold all parties accountable, regardless of their perceived victimhood. Only then can we create a society where genuine victims are heard, predators are exposed, and justice is served.